Welcome, everybody, to the Mint Title Google Hangout. We have Chris Waters with Waters International and Tim Heyl with the Heyl Group at Keller Williams joining us today. Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right. Happy to be here.
So we just have a few questions that we're going to Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we have a few questions that we're going to ask them that have been coming up, and just kind of some tidbits for all you real estate agents out there, whether you're an individual agent, you're in the middle of growing your team, or you've already got kind of your own empire built. So first question that we've been getting a lot, and a lot of people wanted to know, Tim and Chris, are that you guys have similarities and differences in your marketing efforts. So explain why you guys chose the routes that you've decided to choose. And then also, what did you guys find to be most effective in terms of those marketing campaigns?
So from my perspective, I've just personally, it's kind of a personal choice on my end. I don't think there's any wrong direction. Tim's mastered inside sales and prospecting, and I always had kind of a fascination with the marketing side of just business in general. So that's kind of the direction I went. At the end of the day, it's just all about getting in front of as many people as possible. And on the marketing end, I kind of think about marketing as like, I guess kind of a visual analogy would be like, if you imagine an oil well, it's like every single marketing avenue you have is kind of like an oil well, and they all have a different strategy that you've got to utilize to be effective. Like, for example, if you're farming a neighborhood, or if you're doing radio or TV or billboards or direct mail, there's kind of a different strategy for all these different avenues, and ultimately they all work really well. It's just each different marketing avenue has its own conversion cycle. So what I mean by that, like, for example, if you go farm a neighborhood, you need to do really rich content, very specific to that community. And typically with farming, you get to a break-even point at year one. So the first 6 months, you're just pouring out money, and then on month 12, you start to see, you get into a break-even point. Then you really get to see the juice of all that money and time you're spending in year two. Now, the only way to accelerate that process with any of the marketing is if you also enhance it with prospecting. So, if you were to just send out a community kind of impact style newsletter, and you weren't going to call, you just sent out that marketing newsletter specific to a community, your conversion cycle is much longer compared to if you do that and you're calling all of the people you're mailing to, and you're increasing the number of touches you've got to an individual consumer. So
yeah. I know. So in specific, Chris, I know that you do a lot of radio and TV. So what kind of made you decide to go to the particular radio advertising that you do? Why'd you choose that station as opposed to others, or did you mess around with a couple other ones, or did you stick to that one? Tell us a little bit about those decisions.
Yeah. So anytime you look at any marketing avenue you want to go after, whether it's radio, TV, farming, whatever, you ultimately want to go market where there isn't any competition. And radio and TV are single-handedly the most expensive marketing avenues you can go do. When I started doing radio back in 2013, I was basically $75,000 in the hole, hadn't collected a single commission check, and it started to work, but it took a really long time. TV was even harder. I was $150,000 in the hole before it even started to work. So, for me, the reason I pursued radio and TV is because it's kind of like the juggernaut of advertising. It's the most expensive thing you can do, and so it's got a super high barrier to entry. And so, there's a lot less competition. Whereas, like, say for example, you start doing farming, where you're sending out a community newsletter, for example, there could be other realtors prospecting that neighborhood. And so, that was one of the main reasons I went into radio and TV. Is I had originally built my business like Tim through prospecting, calling expireds, withdrawals for sale by owners, and I had built up and saved a lot of cash to be able to get to this point to where I could spend money on radio and TV. And it's I would say that's probably where I spend the most, where I allocate the most money, no doubt, is radio and TV. And but I think for anybody listening to this call, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
You can pursue anything in marketing, and if you stick to it long enough and you're consistent, you're going to find results. I think the only reason things don't work is because people give up and they don't give it enough time. And then there's other ways to increase your results and expedite the conversion cycle. And one of the most effective ways is to prospect. So you do all this marketing, and then you prospect behind it, and you're calling people and getting their feedback, and asking them, is there anything you can do to add more value to help them, for example, stay up to date on what's happening in the real estate market.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Tim, how about you? What made you decide what you decided, and kind of what's been most effective for you?
So I want to echo what Chris just said. Every single avenue works as long as you don't give up on it. And the people who claim that certain things don't work or don't work well either haven't tried it or haven't tried it hard and long enough. And so I want to just kind of attest to that with open houses. For me, when I got into the business, one of the very first things I went out and did was on the weekend I went out and did a few open houses. And I had no visitors, I had no traction. I clearly didn't know how to do open houses, and I clearly didn't do it for long enough. I gave up, and for a couple of years in the back of my head, I basically just decided that open houses don't work. And here we are in 2014 last year, or I'm sorry, no, 2015. This past year, the Rookie of the Year here at the Keller Williams Southwest Market Center, where I office, her name's Shayna Moats, and Shayna just blew my mind with what she accomplished. She closed 48 deals from open houses in her first 12 months in the business. Think about that. She closed $10 million in real estate.
Wow.
Made like $300,000 in commissions from her first 12 months in the business. She was Rookie of the Year at this office of 900 agents, just by getting out there and doing open houses, doing them right, and doing them consistently, and doing them over a long period of time, not giving up. And she absolutely crushed it. And so I literally had Shayna come in and train me and my agents and our staff here on how effective open houses are done, because she clearly gets it, right? She clearly where I just physically I couldn't make it happen. She got it. And so I believe, like what Chris said, it goes that way with anything. Whether you decide you're going to work your sphere, or you're going to door knock, or you're going to do open houses, or you're going to spend money on radio and TV. Look at Chris. Chris, he said he was $75,000 in the hole. Now that's a risk that was bigger than anything that I was willing to take. And yet Chris jumped out there and took the risk, and he stuck with it. A lot of people wouldn't have stuck with it like he did. A lot of people would have gotten 40,000 in the hole or 50,000 in the hole and said, I'm not going to keep doing this. And yet, as long as you stick with these things over time and you're following a model, Chris is following a model. He's part of a group, an international group or a national group of radio and television experts that actually has a model that actually trains you how to do it effectively. So he's not going out there and just spending money aimlessly. And same thing with Shayna Moats. She wasn't going out there wasting her weekends aimlessly. She actually was going out there and following a model that was put in place before her, and doing it, being very purposeful about how she did it. And Chris was being very purposeful, and neither of them gave up. Both of them stuck with it and actually made it through. And it was the same. So for me, I got into the business and had no money. So Chris and I both got into the business with no money. And so we both chose prospecting initially because it's free, and you can continue to talk to more and more people every single day. It's something that's scalable. I think we both looked at our spheres, because Chris and I are both from Austin. We're both born and raised here. And we looked at our spheres as kind of a limited group of people, and we didn't want to be limited. We wanted to be able to continue to reach out to new people every single day. And so cold calling expired listings, and circle prospecting neighborhoods, that was an avenue that allowed that for us. And so for me, it cost me no money. It just took my time, which I had plenty of because I had no business. So I had no clients, so I was able to spend 4 or 8 hours a day or whatever it needed to be spent to make those calls. And eventually I got to the point where, as any new agent, every person or every business person has two major resources. They have time and they have money. And a new agent who gets in the business completely fresh, like Chris and myself, had a lot of time and no money. And then as we invest the time appropriately, and we start doing deals, our time gets limited because we have a bunch of clients that we're servicing and we have a business that we're building, but our money goes up because deals start closing. So all of a sudden you even out. And then all of a sudden it starts leaning like this, and you end up with very little time and quite a bit of money. And so now you get to this point in your business where you can't actually be the one to wake up every morning and go in there and just outwork everybody else. You have to actually think strategically and purposefully about how to reinvest the money that you've made from your time investment. Now how can you reinvest the money and let the money work for you? And that's where Chris and I went to different paths. We met each other as massive competitors in that prospecting business, and so we both decided we don't have time to keep doing this ourselves, so what do? And so as Chris kind of phased toward the marketing route, I doubled down on the prospecting route. And so for me, it was hiring a calling assistant, and today we call those ISAs, an inside sales agent or an inside sales associate. And so it's the same thing. Just as Chris was spending money on advertising, I'm spending money on a person. And the reason I chose to go that route, Nick, is because I've always heard from my dad, Gary Keller, but really this goes back to my dad. My whole life, he's always told me it's always smart to invest in what you know. And I always asked him growing up why he didn't invest in the stock market like all of my friends' parents. You know, all my friends' parents, I'd hear them in side conversations talking about their stock market investments, and I always asked him, why don't you invest in the stock market? You should go buy stocks. And he said, I like to invest in what I know. I'm a home builder, so I know real estate. And so my dad's he's purchased real estate. He owns buildings that he's leased out for years and years and years, and he reinvests in his business. He reinvests in himself. And so I followed that mentorship from my dad of invest in what you know. And so being a prospecting-based agent, I decided rather than trying to go out and learn a different marketing, rather than trying and learning and understanding the numbers of direct mail or of internet advertising or whatever, why don't I just keep doing what I already know? I understand the conversions. I understand what's reasonable and acceptable as a bottom line for a given day, as a minimum standard. I also understand what's attainable as a high goal. So I know what I can expect from somebody else because I've done it, and I've been in there day in and day out. I understand the culture, and I understand the systems and the tools involved. So because I had spent years doing it myself, it was the natural progression to go ahead and get somebody in place and just leverage that activity to them and hold them accountable to the standards that I already expected of myself.
Awesome. Thanks for the answers, guys. Yeah, thanks for those answers. It's pretty interesting to see that you guys had different, or at least right now, different ways to market, and both can be so successful. So it's nice to know that there's not one specific way in order to find some success in what you're doing. So on to the next question. I know you guys both have large teams. So when you're hiring people on your team, whether it's an assistant, a buyer's agent, a listing specialist, what do you guys look for in those different kinds of positions? And then also, at what point do you decide or know that, hey, this person's not going to be a good fit, or hey, we want to go ahead and make an offer and bring you on the team?
So for at our company, on day one, when you come on board, we go through the job offer and expectations and what the goals and kind of key performance indicators are we're going to be looking for. And so on day one, they sign their job acceptance and go through all the typical legal paperwork, but they also sign a resignation letter saying that if they don't hit these numbers on day 90, that this is a resignation saying, I'm going to go look for another place to work. So that's something we had to put in place because we found ourselves, always giving people second chances and third chances and four chances, and just, letting things go on way too long. And it's not like there was anything really, like the people we would bring on were amazing people and very intelligent, great people, but we were doing them a disservice by keeping them on. They could probably find success somewhere else, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out on our team and in our organization. So, this was probably one of the biggest challenges for me, and one of the biggest hurdles I had to kind of to learn and go through as a business owner, and that's finding talent and what to look for in people. I mean, it's probably single-handedly one of the most hardest things I've had to learn how to do. And so ultimately, what it really comes down to is really trying to identify what, if you're like a single agent, for example, or you've got, a 2 or 3 person team, what it really boils down to is, you ultimately need to align yourself with people that have similar core values. I think anybody listening to this call, they know that you should go out there and create a vision and a mission statement and core values. And it just seems like one of these like kind of theoretical things that like you should do in business, but like nobody actually looks at it and pays attention to it. And it's just one of these things like writing a business book where you're just like, this is just something I read in a business book that I should do. But and that's what I did for many years. And then it finally started clicking for me as I started studying, what companies had really good team culture, or had great culture. Like you hear about Zappos, the shoe company, and they're like one of the highest rated they've got one of the best cultures. Same with Google. And it's like, what is it? I spent years like just beating my head against the wall, just like failing over and over and over at this and trying to figure it out. And what I finally realized, what made their culture great, was when they first started the companies, they realized like, look, we need to align with other people like ourselves and that have similar core values, and we need people to share in our vision. And your vision is something you really have to like. It needs to be your dialogue and like something you talk about on a consistent and regular basis. What it is, what the big, hairy, audacious goal is, and what you see the company being.
Mm-hmm.
You got to talk about it regularly, and your core values. Like for example, the core values at our group at Waters International is an acronym, and the word is freedom. And freedom is what everybody's, aspiring to accomplish, right? Have massive success in their career, be able to do what they want, when they want. Freedom equals a lot of different things, financially, a number of different things, right? So each letter in that acronym means something to the people on our team. And it's like, this is like a regular dialogue, like where we're constantly talking about these core values. And when we meet with somebody, it's less about how skilled they are. It's less about the prior experience they've had. I mean, they could go get like a degree in biology and join our sales team if they're in alignment with our core values. So I think those are some of the really important things to like kind of understand in the beginning. Because it's one of those things where it's like, God, if I had really realized years ago how important that was, like we would have probably grown even faster. I mean, I can't speak for Tim, but for us, like we hired so many of the wrong people. It was not that there was anything inherently wrong with each individual we hired. It's just they didn't align with our same core values.
Yeah, it just wasn't the right fit for either party.
Right. So I mean, like for an example, for like on our team, one of our core values is, you've got to have this like just crazy inherent inner drive. You like wake up in the morning and you're just ready to take on the world. So like that inherent drive, is super important to us. So one of the questions we ask in the job interview process is, what time do you wake up in the morning? What is it you do first thing in the morning? What are your habits? What are you reading? These are some of the questions we'll ask to try to like gauge, is this somebody that's like really driven, trying to improve themselves, and what are their routines outside of just what they do and work from 8 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So
Awesome.
And another example would be like at Zappos. Like if you go interview at Zappos, they would ask you from a 1 to 10, how weird are you? And the founders of Zappos said something kind of interesting about them was they all felt like they were kind of weird. And so if you say less than a 7 on the 1 to 10 score of how weird you are, you're not going to get hired at Zappos. And it's just that's just one of the things about all the people at Zappos is
yeah,
it's one of their values. So
Nice.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Tim, how about for you?
Yeah. So the number one thing that we look for more than anything else is perseverance. So we call that grit here, and sometimes we refer to it as resilience. And it's at the end of the day, it's just perseverance. It's somebody who, no matter how many times they get knocked down, they just keep getting back up and keep going. And that's out of everything that we look for, that's the number one key thing, because we've noticed it's the difference in the people that have succeeded with me over the last 5 or 6 years and the people that have failed and not made it. That's the one key trait. And so after realizing that, I would say, and I've had a bunch of conversations with you, Chris, about this. I know it's something that you guys value very, very highly as well and look for as well. So yeah, having grit, having that persistence, that's one of the most key things. What we do, Nick, when we go out to look for somebody, we're really looking at 4 major things. The first one is natural behavioral style. Okay, we want to know what their natural behavioral tendencies are. And in general, I'm always looking for somebody with high aggression, somebody who's very assertive. What that means is they're naturally somebody who is proactive. They're just naturally somebody who has a proactive approach to everything. That's the behavioral characteristic we look for more than anything, more than sociability, even for sales roles, more than sociability, more than how fast paced or slow paced. The number one thing we look for in behavioral style is how quickly they get into action, how proactive they naturally are. All right. The second thing we look for, is their trajectory. We're looking at their past. So we want them to take us back into their past and tell us their life story. We'll have them go back to when they graduated from high school or college, or at some point back when they kind of ended childhood and started growing up. And we want them to take us through the major events in their life, and we want them to tell us about their high points and their low points. We want to find out what they learned at each pieces of those stages, and we want to find out what jobs did they have and how much money have they been making all along the way. The reason we're going through this is I want to know what their trajectory looks like. Is it an upward slant like this? Are they pretty flat? Have they just been kind of coasting? Are they actually on a downward slant? Because what's going to happen is whenever they join me, see, I'm here, and so if they're in an upward slant, then they're gonna keep going like this no matter what. That's the type of person I want, because they're going to take my company to the next level. If they're doing this, they're going to do nothing for us, and if they're doing this, they're actually going to bring us down with them. So I want to find out where they're headed, because wherever they're headed is where they're headed. You don't change people. People are who they are, and they're on a path. And so it becomes like rocket fuel when they're on this path and you're on this path too. And you match up and you're aligned. It's unbelievable what it feels like when that happens. So we're looking at their trajectory. The third thing we're looking at is their intelligence. So we have a bunch of interview questions that we ask, and it's not that we really care what the answers are. We just like to know how they think. We like to get into their mind and understand how this person thinks. Do they have an unlimited mindset? Do they have a limited mindset? What process do they go through when they set goals or think about their future of their life or run into obstacles? What does that process look like? So we want to find out how intelligent this person actually is. And then the fourth thing is their motivation. So we want to find out what's most important to them about their career future. We want to find out how motivated they are and what's actually motivating them. And so we have a bunch of different exercises that we go through to figure out these 4 things: behavior, trajectory, intelligence, and motivation. And once we figure those things out, we found out a lot about them. And then we like to back check it. We like to find out what other people have to say about them, right? So we're gonna check references. We're gonna talk to people and really find out what other people have to say about them. And we've got a whole process to go through that. It's called the Recruit Select process with Keller Williams. So it's something that I teach, and we ought to, Nick, now that I'm thinking about it, we ought to do one at Mint Title. So once you gather up enough people who are at that stage where they're going to hire somebody, without going through this class first, it could end up being a disaster like it was for me. So I went through this class 10 times before I learned how to teach it and started teaching it. Wow. I highly recommend people taking it. So we should just offer it. That way we can get all these agents in Austin to get in there and make effective hires.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for your input. I know we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left here, so we've got one question left for you all. I know that you two specifically love reading books, whether it's to get new nuggets and continue your education, or if it's just for pleasure. But what would you say that what 3 books would you recommend for agents to read? Whether it's an individual agent or it could be someone who's out of production and building their empire.
Thank you, sir.
So
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
no, that's it. It's all you, Chris.
Yeah, so I think it all depends on what stage you are in your career. I think when you're first getting going, really learning how to be a good salesperson, reading books that have to do with sales is really important. And sales can have a lot of different meanings to people, like what salespeople are, and some people have negative connotations of salespeople. And I think a good salesperson is just somebody that takes a very consultative approach to really understand what somebody else is trying to accomplish and then fulfill whatever their needs and wants are. And some of the key books I picked up in the early stages of trying to understand what's a good salesperson was a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and then some of the other follow-up books that kind of help with sales training is Zig Ziglar, like The Secret of the Close, for example. And The Secret of the Close, that's an awesome book. The title can be kind of misleading because it makes you think like there's some special technique to closing people, and kind of the overall thesis of the book is, it ultimately just comes down to really genuinely and just being super authentic and really understanding what it is the consumer wants and helping them accomplish that. And sometimes that doesn't always work out in your favor as a salesperson. For example, you could meet with a homeowner that wants to sell their home. It says they want $300,000 for it, but it's only worth $275,000, and you turn that consumer down because you know that they're not going to be able to sell their house for that number. Versus telling them, okay, I'll sell for $300,000, and in the back of your mind, it's not going to work. So anyways, so I think those are some of the key sales books early on, and I think as you grow your business, every single book that's out there can kind of be help you find that aha moment to help you overcome whatever challenge it is. Now I'm more on the leadership side of things, so.
You kind of read books based on what part of your professional career that you're at, based on what when you started out you're reading sales books, now you're reading leadership books. So that's interesting to hear.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. How about you, Tim? What would you say 3 of your favorite books are, or that you'd recommend to agents to read?
Definitely want to echo Chris in that we don't read just to read. We read to take action, right? I want to kind of just extend off what Chris was starting to say. We read to take action. We don't read to know. We read to do. That would be the thing to write down. We don't read to know. We read to do. And there was a point in my life where I was following people who had goals to read 50 books in a year or 25 books in a year, and I started saying, yeah, I'm going to have these goals too. I'm going to read all these books. And I learned pretty quickly that I was reading through all these books and I wasn't actually changing anything in my life. So I want to encourage everybody, you'd be better off reading 1 book in a year and taking action and changing the way you live your life than reading 50 books in a year, 1 every week, and not taking any action at all and just knowing a lot more. Remember, your life is going to be just a result of your actions, right? It's going to be a result of what you're actually doing with your life and how you change it and how you actually go out and take action. So you should be reading to do. So that being said, it goes right along with what Chris was saying is you don't just read the next book someone throws in your face or the next Malcolm Gladwell book that comes out because it's the most popular thing. You want to find out what your struggles are, what obstacles you're going through, and go find that book. Go ask a mentor. You should have mentors, and go ask them, hey, here's the struggle I'm going through. What book do you recommend to help me get through this struggle? Or what class do you recommend that I go to? Or what podcast do you recommend that I listen to? It doesn't always have to be a book. But yeah, so for me, my struggle when I graduated from college was, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And I was thinking about getting into real estate, so I read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. I read that book, and it literally changed my life because I realized that there's so much more to being in real estate than just being a hotshot salesperson. You could actually be a business owner that begins to succeed through other people and build and own an actual business. And that really, really excited me, and it walked me through how to do that. And then I had to learn how to actually be a real estate agent now that I was going to go out and build this business. So I read Gary Keller's book, Shift. And the book Shift walks you through pricing property, staging property, negotiating deals. It walks you through the lead generation process on the buyer side and on the listing side. It walks you through every single aspect of real estate and how the top people in the industry are doing it at a high level. So I did that. And then there's a book called Pitch Anything. The book called Pitch Anything is a great book for sales. If you want to learn how to give a really, really good presentation, that would be the book. And then you're going to eventually become such a great salesperson that you're going to need to hire people so that you can keep moving and keep building. And you're going to hit a ceiling. And when you've done all that you can do, and you're hitting a ceiling and you can't go any further, you're missing a relationship. You're missing a person. And so you have to figure out how to go effectively find the right person who can break you through the ceiling and move you to the next level. And so that book for me was The Rare Find. That was a book Chris recommended to me a couple of years ago. It's called The Rare Find, and it walks you through how companies like Teach for America and the Army, how multiple different successful organizations go out and find talent and bring talent into their organization. And it's a really, really solid book. It's called The Rare Find. And then eventually you have a business, and you got to figure out how to manage the business and how to operate the business effectively. And so 2 really good books I'd recommend for that. One is called The Great Game of Business. And The Great Game of Business talks about running an open book business that is engaging with the employees and brings ownership across the table, sharing a stake in the outcome with the entire company. And I changed the way my whole business operated and financially because of that book. And another one would be 4DX. It stands for the 4 Disciplines of Execution. I know you asked for 3, Nick, but I wrote down.
No. This is great. It's at least different stages and different phases of each level of business that you get in, whether it's individual or whatnot. So keep going, man.
So for personal productivity, to be the best that you can possibly be and accomplish the most that you can possibly accomplish, 4DX, the 4 Disciplines of Execution, and The One Thing by Gary Keller. The One Thing and 4 Disciplines of Execution. And the last one would be, it's another management book, and it's about building a mission and a vision for your company and establishing core values and aspirational values and working as an effective leadership team, actually building and developing a successful, cohesive team. That book would be called The Advantage. And The Advantage includes the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It includes everything from that. It's by the same author and it 10 times more. So I'd highly recommend that book as well. Those books are all books that caused me to change the way that I was doing something, and it changed my life for the better.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us on this call today. If you guys have any questions that you want Tim or Chris to answer for our next Google Hangout in January of 2016, feel free to email me at nick@minttitle.com. Other than that, we're all wrapped up here. You guys have a great rest of your Decembers. Close out the year strong, and we'll see you guys in 2016.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you having us.
All right. Take care.